pro-Bernie group Roots in Action, which was actually pretty harsh and aggressive in criticizing the Biden campaign during the Democratic primaries, is now urging progressive voters in swing states to vote for Biden in the upcoming general election. Now, one of their efforts involves a pretty effective ad that they've spent about 6 figures on. It will air in swing states, and the whole point is to talk about not how great Biden is, because obviously they were very critical of Biden, but more importantly, how critical it is to beat Donald Trump. That is the focus. And you're certainly gonna notice that in this ad, which uses the voice of Noam Chomsky.
Another 4 years of Trump may literally lead us to the stage where the survival of organized human society is deeply imperiled. The most important issue that humans have faced in their history is the impending catastrophic climate disaster.
According to a new report, experts say that we have until 2030 to avoid catastrophe.
Trump is the worst person in the world on this issue.
All of this with the global warming and that, and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
So we have a choice between trying to find a way to survive or ensuring disaster. That's just the beginning. The traditional left position is you don't vote for, you vote against. It doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter whether you like Biden or not. That's your personal feelings, irrelevant. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is what happens to the world. Have to get rid of Trump, keep pressure on Biden, just as Sanders and associates have been doing. Politics is activism, not taking 5 minutes to push a button. Look what's happening in the streets of the country. The greatest social movement that has ever developed, led by Black Lives Matter. Take Sunrise Movement, managed to put the Green New Deal on the legislative agenda. This generation is going to decide whether organized human society can survive. And the crucial part of this decision is to get rid of the major barrier to survival, which happens to be in the White House.
So John, I really want to just discuss your perception of the efficacy of an ad like this, especially in swing states. It is targeted toward progressive voters who have become incredibly discouraged with electoral politics. Do you think it'll be effective, or do you think this isn't enough to persuade people?
I think it's a good ad. My inclination is to say that it will be ineffective for a few reasons and not necessarily the ones you might think. I think one reason that it will be ineffective is that I don't think it's as necessary as it might seem. I think that, like I remember in 2016, warning people about what Trump was gonna be like, and then spending the last few years experiencing all of that coming true. I think that a lot of people kind of just get it. Like, I don't think that the case needs to be made quite as much. So that's not really a point to its efficacy, but the need for it. I think that that's one thing, is that I think that the number of people that sort of would need to be reached by an ad like that is significantly smaller than it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I definitely agree with you on that.
I also think that in terms of really changing someone's mind, if this is one of the things that's sort of core to your political identity, is that I'm not gonna do it. If you don't think of political engagement the way that Noam Chomsky just talked about there, where it's about what you're doing all the time, and voting is one of those things, rather than, I think some people just think of their vote as a judgment on who they are as a person and what their convictions are or something like that. It's the most important thing. If you think of that, then I don't know why that ad would necessarily change your mind. That's and it's again not necessarily much of a criticism of the ad. That seems like an incredibly difficult thing to do, but I don't know what an ad would have to look like to change someone's mind if that's how they approach election day.
Right, and so I'm of two minds of this. First off, I actually overwhelmingly love the ad, and the reason why I love the ad is because Well, first, let me say I agree with you. I don't think that group is as big as some might think. I think most people understand the importance of getting Trump out of office. That's point number one. But point number two is what I loved about that ad is that it started with, this statement about how important it is to get rid of Donald Trump. But you're still left with that problem of having a candidate or voting for a candidate who has pushed for policies that have been, just disastrous for this country, disastrous for working Americans. There's no question about that. But toward the middle, it switched to a message that I think is super important. And it's the message that encourages the type of political activism that we've been seeing lately. And it's not just about Black Lives Matter. It's about the Sunrise Movement. It's about worker strikes. It's about labor getting together and trying to figure out ways to hold their employers accountable for their actions. And for me personally, watching that ad in the beginning, I was just kind of like, I know, this is the right thing to do, I get it. And then all of a sudden, it like really hit me like a ton of bricks. Because we are winning electorally when it comes to some of these congressional races. There's no question about it. We're gonna talk about that later in the show. Cori Bush's win, for instance, is huge. Rashida Tlaib, everyone was telling us that she was a very vulnerable candidate and she won by a large margin. I mean, we're seeing progressives really make a name for themselves within Congress. Jamal Bowman, the list goes on and on. But aside from that, aside from electoral politics, I really do think that the activism that we're seeing by the people is incredibly important, right? And I like that the ad not only touched on that, it really emphasized that, beginning in the middle of that ad to the end.
When I said at the beginning that it's a good ad, I think it's incredibly well done. I think the visuals are powerful. Obviously, Noam Chomsky speaks with, I mean, you know who he is. You get what he's saying. Like it is powerful. Like it's always going to be with him. I get that. One of the things that I guess sort of there's like a bitter edge to the ad is that I'm watching it, and a lot of it is in the beginning is about climate change, and so you probably think, well, this is made for John. This is something that he cares about, and it is. But it's also like this is coming after a few years of like for regular people, it is still so hard to get them to care. And like I'm watching that, I'm thinking, man, you're right. No, he's so powerful. The idea that he'd have 4 more years, devastating to our efforts to stop climate change. But I also know that although it is gradually working to convince more people to put this sort of central to their politics, it's still a very difficult task getting people to care about about climate change and dealing with it, especially in this time in 2020. It's harder than it was in 2019 or 2018 because obviously we have these big things that are punching us in the face literally every day. And so that's another reason that I wonder if that will be a sort of messaging that will work now. Are enough people going to be primed to think, oh yeah, no, that should be the most important thing that we're planning for, and I'll act accordingly? I don't know.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.